It's really an honor to introduce our speaker today. Paul Sohi is the CEO of the Florida High Tech Corridor, and I'll let him explain in detail what that really means. He joined the Corridor Council in June of 2020, following more than 3 decades of service in the United States Navy, for which we thank you. He is also served as founder and president of Backfin Partners, a consulting and supporting company for defense firms. He holds a bachelor's degree in aeronautical engineering from MIT, some small school, and a master's degree in aeronautical and astronautical engineering from Stanford University. Additionally, he is a graduate of the former commanding officer of the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School. Please welcome Paul Sohi.
So let me, first of all, thank you for having me. Heidi, beautiful. And between that and the pledge, you know, I typically tear up. I was a Cub Scout, a Boy Scout, kid from the Midwest, so thank you for that. I want to start by doing a video. We just pulled this together a couple of months ago. It will probably answer a couple questions and then invite more questions. I'll step through some slides, and then I've heard on good authority that this is a tough crowd, which is good. I want you questioning. I want you to ask me. I want to build a relationship. So with that,
the rate of innovation is exponential. And if the evolution of Florida's techscape is any indication, exponential is an understatement. Through a constellation of industries, tech's potential drives the future of Florida beyond its borders and around the globe. For 25 years, the Florida High Tech Corridor has been a force multiplier, working to unleash the exponential potential of the 23-county region we represent. Anchored by 3 of the country's top research institutions, the corridor converges and catalyzes the capacity of high-tech innovation and bright minds to generate a ripple effect that advances the lives of the people in the communities we serve. Powered by an ethos of collaboration, we align opportunities, funding, and resources in academia, industry, and economic development to unleash our region's X potential.
three words that the corridor is fundamental to what we do: connect, collaborate, and convene. And it is about what's already here. It's about the innovation. It's about why you're here, right? It's about ideas and creativity in this 23 county region. And often I would get this question: how do you connect to the corridor? Well, number one, you're part of it. You're on the team and you don't even know it. And I do need your help. So with that, let me go ahead and we'll start the slides. Rules of engagement: please ask questions, raise your hand. I didn't understand that piece. I will rapidly go through them because, quite frankly, you don't want to hear me. I'd rather hear you and what you want to know. So I'm not touching it, because what I would do is I would disconnect Zoom inadvertently and we'd lose that audience. MIT was interesting for me. I'm not a tech guy, so it was a good time. Yeah, geez. Let me see if this will. Jim, I'll let you run it, or there you go. Thanks, Rich. So let me talk. And I got to stay close to the mic because Zoom's on here. So truly, 23 counties. We're 25 years old. We live on the legacy of the last 25 years. For those that know Randy Barrage, the first CEO of the High Tech Corridor 25 years ago. We are celebrating that 25 years this year. And part of my message to the team, and if you think the team is big, there are 6 of us. That's it. That's what nonprofits do, right? They're these small, mighty teams that go after things. And I kind of like it, having gone from the Navy, a few thousand in various commands, to a group of 6. I kind of like the 6 piece. So this is who we are, and this is what we are. It started as the partnership. 3 universities, you know who they are, tremendously boundary breaking idea. Could you imagine universities working together to keep high-tech, high-growth firms here? And that was the vision. That is the vision, and that will continue to be. And I'll show you where we're headed. It's about the economic competitiveness of Florida. One of the reasons, and I came down from Maryland. We had a 4-year tour in Jacksonville. Loved it. I was commanding officer of the aviation depot in Jax. My wife, as we were discussing retirement and transition, she said, "Hey, I'd love to get back to Florida if that's possible." So note to self, I've been married at that point 27 years. I'd like 27 more. If that's possible, sure, we can get down here. And this is the blessing that I get as part of the high-tech corridor. We have a regional perspective. What I have learned, and I've been on a listening and learning journey for the last 2 years. I will tell you that listening and learning journey will go on for at least another 8, because there is so much. I had told my co-chairs of my board, the presidents of the 3 universities, I'll get you a strategic plan in 6 months. 3 months later, I said, no, I won't, because there's so much magic going across the corridor and what we can do. And part of the power of it is the regional perspective. 23 counties, everything from Tampa all the way through here in Gainesville to the Space Coast. Amazing technologies, amazing young kids and innovation, amazing logistics and transportation and science and tourism. It's all and. Everything is and. It's not this or that, it's and that's what we're about. A collaborative culture. You heard me say connect, collaborate, and convene. The collaborative culture, I see what's magical about the collaborative culture is its boundary breaking. So what do I mean by that? It's easy to collaborate in your own groups. What we're talking about and the magic of innovation, I see it constantly in the corridor, is collaboration between groups that would not normally get together. That's part of what we drive. Who's not at the table? What bit of creativity can we get here in this group to really explode that particular benefit to really the world? So that's the collaborative culture. And then we're honoring that legacy and challenging status quo every single day. That's my mission, is to challenge status quo. I want to go after and say, we can do things better, we can do things differently. Connective tissue. We are somewhat of a connective tissue. There are a whole lot of innovative ecosystems that are out there. It really centers on university research and innovation piece. You're part of this group. You're part of this circle as a community, as a group that wants to know more about this and what we do, and you can help. That's tremendously valuable to me. I'll step through these 4 things real quick. About half the business is in applied research. We have a matching grants program. I think there's, So part of our funding, about half of it goes to what we call our matching grants research program. Here's what happens. Small, medium-sized company wants to do research with the University of Central Florida, University of South Florida. They come to us and say, we'd like to do this. We match them up with research professor, students at the university in that particular thing, and we match funds on top of their funds. It's one thing to collaborate. It's another thing to come with a paycheck, with a check. And that's one of the things. We are not a member organization. We're funded by the state. So again, I'm blessed to have money from the state that we can go do this. I think there's power in that because we know we are a deck plate level. We know exactly the innovation that's going on, and we're learning every day, and we're able to put those resources toward that. For the last 25 years, over $1 billion in economic impact downstream. I was at USF 2 days ago. Last year, just in our matching grants research, matching dollars, part of what we do is we join up with students. 70 students, undergrad and graduate, participated in programs funded by matching grants to do research. I will tell you, there's magic in that. There's magic because these young undergrads are getting experience in research that they thought, oh, I'm not on the PhD track. I don't need to do that. And they get to play in research, and they get to go in the lab, and they get to see things, and that it can be life-changing for them and what they do, because that's part of where I see the magic happen. So matching grants is a huge program. Here's some stories of impact. I love this particular one because it's UCF and USF together. So here you've got, and this goes to infrastructure. This is a great example. I mean, it's about once every few months you hear about a bridge collapsing. Now you've got two professors here that are working on a way to use autonomous vehicles to just let them drive across bridges, and they're able to tell the health of the bridge. Could you imagine that? As opposed to how we do it today, which is get 6 civil engineers in 3 weeks and try to discover, and now they've got algorithms to be able to just run an autonomous vehicle across, and we know what's good and what's not good. I sat in Embry-Riddle 2 weeks ago, and there was a student there that has an even better idea than that, and that's using light to do the same thing. And actually, she's working with the city of Pittsburgh because they have 443 bridges. And in fact, if you remember the news, remember when President Biden showed up and the bridge collapsed? Yeah. 443 bridges. She can mechanize that so that the county doesn't even have to go look. They can get daily health from those bridges. They will know when things are going to go bad. Hugely important and insightful on this. Workforce. STEM Connect, we have a program called STEM Connect. Part of what we're and I would love to get your inputs on this. Workforce in the future workforce in innovation has to be inspired early, really early. So for the work that you all do with your community engagement and with young students, this is something that we're passionate about, especially and primarily, quite frankly, for underserved communities, underrepresented communities. And I would call them underappreciated because there is much creativity in that group as in the groups that exist today. And one of our niches for the corridor is, I don't want to be the corridor that simply has technology for technology's sake. And believe me, sometimes I drift in that world. I love tech. I love the cool things that can be done. And there has to be tech for a purpose. There has to be tech for a reason. And in fact, Bill and I were talking about, I came down here 2 years ago, and it was my sense that this was a community of tourism or technology, take your pick. That ain't the question. It's tourism and technology and education and inspiration and art. All these things flow together. And I know for some of you, you're thinking, yeah, that's easy. And you just mix them up and now what's going to happen? I will tell you, that is where the magic happens. Where you have, and you're going to see it. I can't say, but on May the 9th, you're going to see the launch of what I think is the most important thing for Central Florida in its next step of tourism, entertainment, and technology and innovation. That's, to me, incredibly exciting. Entrepreneurial support, we invest in things like incubators. So if with a Creative Village, with the incubators from UCF, USF, UF, we invest in that because that is where, again, the idea of the next solutions to big problems are coming from. Here's a great example. If you don't know the organization Grow FL, they are about connecting CEOs, and I'll forget the jargon here because in my head, here's how it works. When a small company grows and you have a CEO in there, and at some point she's sitting there trying to do every single job, and at some point they're going to grow large enough to say, I need some help. And so what Grow FL does is be able to pair up those CEOs. We invested in them in this mentoring program because that's the most needed thing. That's where the gap is. So we partner with a lot of these organizations across 23 counties. Because the 23 counties are different, we do different things for different counties. My relationships with the universities are different. So that's okay. That's, to me, the way we should be. Marketing, part of our job is, in fact, before coming here, who either knew of the corridor or heard about it, or raise your hand. I'm curious. Okay, so that's actually pretty good. That's pretty good at the numbers. Because a lot of my unscientific, but running around on Zoom and talking to a lot of people is, yeah, we kind of heard of the corridor, but we don't know what it does. And that's part of our job as we find our niche of what do we do with the research dollars that we have, with the connections that we have, and with our regional posture, what we're able to do. And then we've got I've got a podcast that's going on now as well. And really what we're trying to do is connect with those organizations that are helping those small and medium-sized high-tech, high-growth firms stay here and spin off the great solutions to problems that, quite frankly, it's my generation that's given them these problems. It's these young kids that are going to help solve these. Connect, collaborate, convene. I talked to you a little bit about that and what we do. Industry diversification. So we're working. This was a first for us last year, working with the county. They wanted to do industry diversification beyond tourism, and so we're helping them with a cluster strategy. We created a team to be able to help do that. We had never done that before. We'd always used state dollars and just kind of spend them, and that was it. And my idea is I want to be able to get more dollars in to be able to help. That company's called Senfluence. That group's called Senfluence. The other thing we're going after is there is real power in the region for going after grants. We have never done that before. So the power, as opposed to a city or a county trying to go after a federal grant, we can use the corridor to be able to say, look what you have here in Florida. Look the relationships that are already together and how that applies to be able to get those grants. In fact, we've already started winning some of them, which is great. So here's the question slide. How can I help you? What questions do you have for me? Let's have a discussion. I know Bill will run around with a mic, and that includes the Zoom folks. If they've got questions, I'm not quite sure how your voice will be heard, but I would love to. I'd love to hear your thoughts because this is as valuable for me. Yes, sir.
Yes, Alan Schaefer.
Alan,
I
yeah.
was very impressed by the focus on education.
Yeah.
One of the things, I'm sure you probably know this, I think 3 out of the 4 most innovative, richest companies in the world were founded by innovators.
Yeah.
They all had Montessori education. I'm involved in Montessori education here in Florida.
Yeah.
If you're looking at Montessori, getting you to the lower youth to get that started, there might be some way that you can help and then benefit from that.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And let me dovetail that a second. And I was just up in a meeting with UF. If you're familiar with Gainesville, there's a wonderful, and I'll say a museum, but it's much more than that. The Cave. If you've ever been to the Cave, Museum of Creativity and Invention, and we're partnering with them now to drive curricula into the schools that is very, very Montessori-like, that we know. I mean, come on, I was in grade school, and what were you rewarded for? How fast can you raise your hand to answer the question and then stand by if you answer it wrong, right? We want an environment where kids fail fast. We want an environment where they can experiment, that they understand, because that's only the way you learn, and that they can follow and they can be curious about those things. So that's one. I absolutely agree with you, and I'm going to take that back with me and say, how could we do that? And that's one of the paths I've been on. I see it earlier. We need to be involved much earlier in that path. And we can do that because we have the flexibility. Hey, I'm not too worried about the State Department of Education and everything else. That's okay. Those are those frameworks. But the idea of that piece is hugely important. So, yes, sir.
Are you familiar with 1 million cuts?
I am.
Alan and I serve on the board here. We're meeting now for the first time in a couple of years. We used to meet at Rollins all the time.
Yep.
We're meeting
Yeah.
at the UCF Innovation.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'd like to get together with you. You've got a lot of companies who'd like to present to us.
Absolutely.
A bunch of entrepreneurs to try to help you.
Yeah. So what was your first name? Denny, thank you for that. So this is a quick story on that. As we helped Orange County create the framework for a clustering initiative, one of those things is, so what are the supporting organizations that are out there for these young founders? We call it our NASCAR slide. There are hundreds of support organizations. And in fact, what we found in these small companies, they didn't know where to go. And so that's part of that is getting visibility to that. 1 Million Cups is a great, starter studio, startup weekend, global entrepreneur network. All these things are out there. And in fact, that was part of the reason why I said, I can't give you a strategic plan. There's just too much here. So I love the idea, and I would love, to me, we connect, and I want to understand what that is. Yes, sir.
My name is Emerson.
Emerson, how are you?
NASA first started, they emphasized the astronauts, but later when they tried to get businesses, commercial supporters, they emphasized the products that came from NASA.
Yep.
That was then sent into the general public.
Yeah.
What are you doing to let the public know the results of your investment?
Yeah, so great question. Not enough for starters, as far as letting people know what these investments are doing. In fact, in matching grants, 2 weeks ago, I hired a new full-time person at UCF to help me with that. I had one at USF. I didn't have one at UCF. We have data stories of what matching grants research investments do for USF. We don't have it for UCF. The other thing that I'll say is on the NASA side, and NASA is another, the richness of the region and what we have. Here's one of the things we help NASA do. So last year, NASA said, hey, we've got all these technologies. We'd love to put them in the hands of students and get some ideas on how to commercialize and what to commercialize. And so they looked across the corridor and we said, how can we help? And they said, help us figure out who to connect with. And where they decided to connect was Hillsborough Community College. Okay, why Hillsborough? Why not a bigger university? For them, they felt like, and there are two people, Andy Gold and Beth Curley, who both are PhDs. They run the innovation lab at Hillsborough Community College, the M Lab. Tremendous boots on the ground innovation place. We held a 2-day event with NASA there and student teams there to take some of those technologies and answer the 17 UN goals kind of across the world, which is a great sort of aligning, galvanizing thing. How would you solve that problem with that technology? The best presentation was, in my mind, I wasn't a judge, best presentation in my mind, 16-year-old girl who was part of the team. She was awesome. And how she took, and how her mind worked. I said, if I had $10, I'd invested in her and what she did. And then the piece to your point about getting the story out. There are thousands of stories that never make the light of day. Part of our role in that is getting that out there. We're starting that already from a regional perspective to get it out to the rest of the country and quite frankly, the rest of the world by highlighting what the corridor is, what Central Florida is. You're going to see that on May the 9th as well. And that's not our thing. We're part of it, but that's not our thing. That getting that message out on what can happen, what is real in Central Florida. So thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Thank you for a great presentation. That's my question. So you mentioned earlier that in the undergrad college, I recently visited the Orlando Tech College here as part of my leadership program, and there they said 85% of the tech jobs they don't need a formal education.
Yep.
So I was going to ask you, is that true or what are you thinking of?
Yeah. So great question. I don't know the data on that, but I will tell you, visiting folks like Lake Tech and Orange Tech and out in Tampa, and they have technical colleges, huge opportunity from, and the example I'll give you is at USF, there's what they call a Center for Advanced Medical Simulations, Advanced Medical Education and Learning, CAMLS. Dr. Akuda runs that program. I get a chance to tour that place with our team. It is a simulation hospital. You walk in there as a doctoral student, and you can participate in all sorts of things going through there. And I asked him, what is your biggest human capital gap? Simulator technicians. to run the simulators, to run the simulations behind the screen, behind the window, to be able to set the environment for the PhD students coming through. Does that require a 4-year degree? Absolutely not. And so I think part of it begins with telling that story, including, I would argue, to our parents. It's one thing to tell our students, you can go do this. It's another thing, and I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of this. For our 3 kids, saying, no, you will go to a 4-year university. Did we ask them what they wanted to do? Yeah, I mean, maybe, I hope. Now that we have a grad and we have a graduate from University of Dallas, one at Virginia Tech in architecture, and our senior in high school here is going to Loyola Chicago. There are so many opportunities that don't require 4-year degrees. I also think the state doesn't do us any favors, and here's why. And so be careful, because lightning might come down and strike me dead. And here's where I don't think they do us any favors. When they say things like, our goal should be a bachelor's degree. I disagree. To me, that's not the goal. To me, what have you done by saying that? You've now said, well, if I don't want to get a bachelor's degree, but I want to participate in manufacturing, that's manufacturing satellites over on the Space Coast today, we've somehow made them second class. We've somehow told them that you're not worth as much. Honestly, that's what we're telling them. The goal should not be every child for a 4-year degree. That is not it. It's just not. And I say that from experience because I thought that way. And now I can see where it can't be that way. Yes, sir.
First, thank you for your 30 years of life.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Secondly, there are 23 counties.
Yeah.
There are 67 counties apart. Are there other southern and northern and western Florida counties similar? And then the second part of that, are you at the whims of the Florida legislatures?
Yeah, boy, those are, and I will, I'm not worried about this group or anything else. I will be I will tell you exactly what I know. Am I at the whims of the legislature? No. Because what has happened over 25 years, it used to be a line item, and that's sort of gone away. So the money flows through USF and UCF. So it's really my ability to take the mission of Dr. Cartwright at UCF and Rhea Law, the new president at USF, and Kent Fox up at UF, and keep them educated and so that, hey bosses, this is where we're going. Is this what you want? Because the funding is now in that big omnibus education thing. So that's what I think about a lot, is I ask for guidance from them. They're the 3 best bosses in the world because they have universities to run and they trust me. And I trust the team, and I trust you to give us the feedback on what we need to do to make an impact. And they've allowed me to take 2 years and even more as I'm on this listening and learning journey. There was you said one other question.
Well, are you in competition with the?
Yeah, so yeah, I will tell you, the language I heard from the counties in the corridor when I first got here was, we need to be like Miami. Or Orlando saying, we need to be like Tampa. Or, that's changing. And I think that's a good thing. Miami just had eMERGE, which is a big crypto and a blockchain kind of discussion. Sure, think about metaverse. What elements go into metaverse? Simulation, gaming, blockchain, got it. We need them all. So let's think about how this corridor connects with a corridor from Miami to the Space Coast, connects with maybe the Jacksonville Panhandle corridor. There's nothing, the thing I think that's magical about something like the corridor is it's a geography with a special, with bits and pieces. I think the challenge of a 23 county corridor, it's damn big. And so I'm trying to find that niche, because these innovation ecosystems, they're grounded in a geography, and it's a if you know what a fractal is, when you a fractal, you know, when you kind of dive into getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and the thing is still there, it's still the same shape. That's what you find in innovation ecosystems. We have, I could say, the corridor is a big innovation ecosystem, and yet so is Orlando, and it has the same similar elements. And you just keep digging deeper. So we have had discussions already, not in growing 23 counties. While I'm here, I won't do that. That to me takes away the magic. I don't want to be a state agency. I really don't want to be a state agency. I would love to be able to begin to connect and work. And when I say we, it ain't me, and it's not our 6 people. It's the people that are in these groups who get together and finally say, yeah, what would it take? Hey, Paul, what would it take? I said, I have no idea. I didn't create this thing 25 years ago, but we can certainly talk about that, figure out what are the first bits of elements to be able to connect it, because that speeds the communication and innovation. Yes, sir.
Well, we've got 4 to 5 more questions.
Okay, yes, sir.
Do you mind staying?
I will stay as long. My next thing is at 2 o'clock on a Zoom call at my house, which is only like 10 minutes that way.
If everybody's questions will hold on, we'll get to you.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you are familiar with UCF's nanotech.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, I was just gonna suggest that might be a good place to explore, but.
Yeah, no, well, no, and I don't know enough about it. So tell the group, can you give them 30 seconds to tell the group about nanotech, or, yeah, because I think it's, I mean, I know it. I would love for them to, it's one of my aha moments in this.
Right, I wasn't part of that in the graphic, just have a friend who was involved in it, and I don't know all of the cutting edge stuff that we're working on, specifically kind of proprietary.
Yep.
Lab,
Yeah.
but they have a whole set, right, a whole section of the.
Yep.
Nanotech.
Yep. So, and you see, and so here's how the connections happen. Thank you for that. Here's how the connections happen. And universities have institutes and their focus areas. So in nanotech, UF has one, USF has one, UCF has one. There is it sort of is reborn now out of COVID. Professor called me from UF. We want to restart the nano conglomerate. I forget what it's called, but it's with all these universities and it's focused on students. Nano is an amazing thing because you can apply it to all kinds of things. There are nanotechnologies, small technologies attacking cancer. There are nanotechnologies in water. You have a company at UCF that can take, using nanotechnology, and pull precious minerals from the polluted water and get these mineral elements that are needed in batteries instead of mining them. This is that boundary breaking sort of virtuous cycle that I find fascinating. Yeah.
I'm graduated from the Rotary Club International side. You mentioned Embry-Riddle. Actually, I attended Embry-Riddle
Yeah.
for a couple of years before switching to marketing. I went from aerospace engineering to marketing at UCF.
Yeah.
But I love the university. Embry-Riddle is it's a powerhouse. They're mostly applied science. Are they known as a research facility or not yet? And are you working with them?
Yeah, we are. So Stephanie Miller, I mean, from the president on down to the dean, Dr. Stephanie Miller runs the Microplex, which is the innovation arm of them. They're probably one of our strongest new connections. Again, I was blessed to come into this organization at a time where, and I would equate, and this isn't judgmental, the ship was kind of in port. And it was, it was the beginning of COVID and there's all kinds of things. And so now we're getting this nuclear aircraft carrier, because I believe that's what it is, moving. Now, the trick is on this particular nuclear aircraft carrier, we were talking about carriers and the importance of carriers here. This particular aircraft carrier has 10,000 little tiny outboard motors. It does not have a nuclear reactor. And part of my job is to take those 10,000 outboard motors, none of which I have control over, and influence the environment to get them to push us in a particular direction. So that's kind of what we're doing. And part of it goes to Florida Poly, Embry-Riddle, Florida Southern, the 14 state colleges that sit in there. I'll tell you about Embry-Riddle and what makes them so, to your point about research. They are not an R1 research university, deep research. Beautiful. Why? Because it's applied. And that's exactly what matching grants does. So when you go, the story I'll give you, talking to the folks in the aero department over there, and by the way, they have the biggest Navy ROTC unit in the country, sits right there. Wonderful. It's a great organization. If you want to know about cyber, go to USF, UF, UCF. If you want to know about cyber and how it affects our aero commercial aviation system and doing research in that, go to Embry-Riddle. And that is where part of our niche is. I am not in deep tech. I am not in deep research. That wasn't why we were put on this planet. It is to help spin commercial, is to help commercialize technologies and get them out there. And that is what we are doing. We're trying to do every single day. And that's the unique, again, the uniqueness of what's available in the corridor, from education to the innovation piece, the resources, from the county to all the government, you know, all those things is, I have at least one aha moment every day. I go, wow, I didn't know that. Really? How's that work? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for a great presentation.
Yeah.
Just curious, with the cost of materials and labor rising, how are you helping the small companies and the startup companies compete with the larger corporations when they're trying to bid on jobs, when they're trying to retain employees,
Yeah.
and they're not able to pay them? But the same employee, you know, they might take them out of UCF or UF, hire them, get them up and running, you
Yeah.
know, and then within a few years, they're getting an offer from
Yeah.
a large corporation that smaller company can't match. How are you helping the small companies succeed like that?
Yeah. I don't think we have a lever in that world right now as far as that challenge. Maybe tangentially. And then I sort of, in that world, I think it takes policy decisions to be able to help. I will tell you that one of the things that we see in these smaller companies, and it goes in the line of, if you can't change it, fight it, sort of work with it. And the example I'll give you is when I was up at the depot at Jacksonville, we could not keep civilians who were working on 5-axis milling machines. Couldn't keep them, can't pay them enough. So what we did was, and this goes to the value of partnerships. What we did was, and this was back in 2008 when I was still active duty, we partnered with a junior college that was there, had students who were going through manufacturing, you know, getting certificates in manufacturing. They would come to our depot and do projects on our equipment. We would get pick of the litter because we see who the students are and say, hey, you know, kind of look at that P3 over there, that F-18 or that H-60. This is pretty cool work. We'd get them in, we'd start that flow. It was a pipeline. We'd start that flow. 5 years later, they'd be trained up on those 5-axis milling machines. And then they'd get called by industry and say, come work. Okay, fair enough. We love you. Keep in touch. Go, and then just keep that thing. Yes, sir.
Paul is a retired career admiral and for Jollies who flew F-18s off aircraft carriers. And then this kind of enthusiasm and leadership in our region. Thank you for being here.
You're very welcome.